in a cell. What's it like when you're trying to get mail? What's it like when you're trying to make bail? When you're getting no help and you're living in hell. Yeah, your mind's on a loop, your stomach's on pause. Dreams of a key, but you're stuck with the bars. A prayer, a scream, a fight with the walls. Time crawls, time stalls, the system don't call. Can you hear me now? Can you feel the sound? This is the weight that pulls me down. This is hard time, real talk radio. This is hard time, real talk radio. This is hard time, real talk radio. Life can be a nightmare, I don't wanna say it though. This is hard time, real talk radio. This is hard time, real talk radio. This is hard time, real talk radio. The journey isn't ending just because they say the case is closed.
Hi everybody, welcome. This is episode 7 of Hard Time Real Talk. I'd like to welcome everybody to another episode. Everything has been going swimmingly so far, and I'd like to just thank all my followers and supporters for being there. We have a very special guest today, a good friend of mine, Marty O'Brien, Townie. I'm not going to go on too long. I'm going to pass it to him and let him give a little background of what he's about, where he's from, and his journey in life.
So, first of all, thank you for having me, John.
Of
really
course.
appreciate it.
Of course.
I love you like a brother. I'm so proud of you to see how far you've come as a man, a father, husband. Yeah, I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
So,
That means a lot.
yeah, we need, growing up in this neighborhood, there was always negativity, plenty to go around, so I like to give guys girls, whoever's doing something positive with their life, I like to point it out and let them know that it's recognized. So yeah, my name is Marty O'Brien. I grew up in Charlestown, Catholic school for 12 years. My childhood played hockey my whole life, right up through high school. On paper, my life looked pretty idyllic.
And I think just to cut in for a second,
Yep.
just so the viewers get an idea, it's kind of the younger viewers. Everybody from your generation, my generation, going to Catholic school was a rite of passage in Charlestown. 1 square mile, 3 Catholic schools. I would pretty much say that everybody that pretty much wasn't from the projects went to Catholic school. I myself went for 10 years, but
Yeah, and not everybody could afford it.
Right.
When I started first grade was the same year that the forced busing started, so that was, a point of contention. And the Boston public schools at the time weren't the greatest. So a Catholic school, whether you were, fully into the religion or not, it was just a good option for parents to send their kids to school locally and still get a good education. So like I said, on paper, my life looked pretty idyllic. My dad was a fireman, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and I went to school 2 blocks away. Grandparents, uncles, my family lived on the same street. When I was 18, I moved to California, probably one of the smartest things I ever did with my life, and that really gave me some perspective on how we grew up, because up until then, I just thought the life that we grew up around in Charlestown was just how the whole world was.
That's how we all thought.
And it didn't take me long in being out in California to realize we grew up pretty different than everybody else. But yep, so that's sort of my background. There's a lot more to it. I don't know how much you want to discuss, but addiction came later for me. Typical kid of the 80s experimenting with pot and cocaine on the weekends, but for me, I wouldn't say I ever had a drug problem until I was in my early 30s.
Do you think that, looking back in hindsight, that you might have been maybe in denial a little bit, or that your friends?
So when I say it was
your friends around
any
you?
drug use is counterproductive to living a positive, productive life. But for me, I was like a weekend warrior. I could go out on the weekends, drink,
Right.
smoke
You didn't let it
pot.
consume
but I still went to work every day. I
Yes.
didn't party on the weeknights, up into a certain point. It wasn't really until the Oxycontins came around that I actually developed a problem. Even before that, Percocet use once in a while, but it never like fully got its claws into me like the Oxycontin did.
'Cause, I mean, I remember being up your house. Your house we used to party up there pretty.
Yeah, we had a
Pretty
four-car,
hard
we had a
on
two-family with a four-car garage, and on top of the garage, there was a deck. So it was a pretty popular spot in the summer.
We used to go
summer
pretty
nights.
hard, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But those weren't, there was no heroin involved there. There was no, that was
No.
just party, smoke a little dust, do a little coke, have fun. Girls there, it was more of a, definitely a fun atmosphere.
Yeah. When the drugs became a habit, that's when it stopped becoming
Right.
fun. And I think that's the case with anybody's drug use. In the beginning, you do it because it's fun,
Mhm.
or because it's, you know, helping you cope with any trauma or issues that are going on personally in your life. But it stops becoming fun pretty quickly. So maybe I'd like to just sort of, I don't even know if you know this, but I'll give you like my view on how I became like a full-blown addict. So,
It also starts to become something you do alone,
yep,
instead of less of a social thing, more of,
yeah, it's like the first thing you know, it gets to the point where it's the first thing you think about when you wake up.
yes. yes.
So, you know, I moved away when I was 18, met a woman, we ended up moving to Pennsylvania together. I had 2 children, bought a house. I used to own a transmission shop out in Pennsylvania. You know, we were young and immature, got married for all the wrong reasons, and the marriage fell apart pretty quickly. And she was from San Diego, I was from Boston, so when the marriage fell apart,
Yeah.
she went home to San Diego, I came home to Boston.
And she gets the
and-
kid.
And yeah, the kids stayed with mom. And
I
so
remember when you came back. I
Yeah.
remember the black truck. You had the black truck.
Yep, black
Pennsylvania,
Suburban.
Pennsylvania license plates.
I would have been about 25,
Yeah.
26 at that time. And I was working on the Big Dig. I worked on the Zachem Bridge. That was a pretty cool project to be able to walk down right down the street and be on such an iconic project. And I was making good money, but I was also living, you know, I'm in my mid to late 20s now, so I was, you know, living the life of a bachelor.
Right.
Looking back, I was still really immature and had my priorities kind of, you know, not kind of, but my priorities were not where they
Yes,
should have
not
been.
aligned correctly.
So there came a point where I thought, you know, when I moved away, through my teen years, I was involved in, you know, small time selling coke on the corner or selling weed. And when I moved away, I sort of like got away from the, you know, I still smoked pot, but as far as like the criminal culture that we, you know, experienced here,
Right.
I kind of got away from that and sort of was living a more normal life. Then when I came back, my friends had progressed through
Yes,
like
yes.
the criminal, up the criminal ladder, and by this time I was, you know, some of my friends had already been robbing armored cars.
What year would you say that was?
That was, so I moved back to Charlestown in like, I think it was 95 or 96. So I would have been 25 or 26 years old at that time. So I was having a lot of fun, but something was missing. And I realized that, you know, I love being a dad, and I saw how fast my daughters were growing up, how quickly they changed. You know, at that time, you know, when I moved back to Boston, they would have been like 5 and 3 years old. So, you know, once they got into elementary school, I realized I'm missing all of that. So I wanted to go back, but because even though I was making good money, even though I wanted to go back and be with my children, and even though I was making good money, I just couldn't seem to save up money, you know, maintain the lifestyle I was
Yeah.
living, and save money to move back across the country to be with my kids. So I had a brilliant idea. I figured I'd rob an
One
armored
good
car
score, one
with
good
my
score.
friends, you know,
Not
one
one,
good
right.
score. And
That's
I
always,
robbed my
that's always
first
a
armored
bad thing.
car on my 29th birthday, 1999.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, and it was a shit show. Nothing went right. Shots were fired, and we got no money. So that was my introduction to that lifestyle. And I'd say probably the better part of a year went by before we attempted another, and that we made some money. I made enough money that...
How much planning, sorry,
That's okay.
how much planning went into the first one? Was there?
Months.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, looking back, we robbed 8 armored cars. The first one and the last one were both unsuccessful. Last one is what I ended up doing my time for. One thing we didn't touch on is in 2021, December 1st of 2021, I came home from prison after serving about 2 months shy of 17 years.
Yeah, that's very
And that's my first and only
Right.
bid ever.
Mhm.
So I got it all out of the way quickly.
You did.
Well, not quickly, but all at once.
And we were there together. We were
Yep.
there together for a good amount of it.
Yep. So I can remember seeing you in the yard and like knowing you now and seeing you when you were a kid on the street, how we were behaving while incarcerated. The contrast between that and now is what really makes me proud of you.
Yes,
You know?
yes, thank you.
So after the first successful robbery, I did what I planned to do. I moved to California and was an active parent and was really happy. And after being back for some time, my ex-wife, the mother of my children, ended up getting killed in a plane crash.
Yeah, I heard that.
So I became
That's
a
so
single
crazy.
father.
So
And not only to my 2 daughters, but my ex-wife had remarried and had a son, Johnny. So his father had been in Hawaii when their mom died in the plane crash. So I became a single dad, had my 2 daughters and their little brother. Took his dad a few months to get it together and, you know, come back to California.
Can I ask, was it a commercial? Was it
No,
commercial?
small 4-seat plane with a single engine. 4-seater, and the pilot was inexperienced. Out east of Los Angeles is Big Bear Mountain, and so they went up to go skiing for the weekend. So I was watching the kids, and Sunday night, you know, we were expecting her Sunday afternoon. Sunday night, her mom called me and said that she was in a plane crash and didn't make it. So at this time, so now I become a single father. I'm in California, and I'm doing okay financially because of, you know, the money I gained illegally. And the girl that I married was from a pretty wealthy family. Her mom was a world-known neurologist. So I kind of felt a little pressure to maintain a certain lifestyle for my kids. And at that time, so San Diego was 17 miles from the Mexican border. I could drive down to Tijuana and buy Vicodins just right over the counter. So like, you know, once or twice a month I'd go down, buy a few Vicodin, sit on the beach, you know, get high, relax, and I can remember I went down one time to get some Vicodin, and I noticed the guy that was next to me was buying OxyContin 80. And I said, "Oh, you have those?" At that time, I had done.
What year?
So that would have been 2003.
Yeah, that was right.
I think
right.
2000,
That was right when they were
2003 is.
They were really.
Yeah, April of 2003
Kicking the shit out
is
of
when my
people.
ex-wife died in the plane crash. So shortly after that is when I switched from buying Vicodin once in a while to buying the OxyContin, you know, once a week, became a couple times a week, became, you know, where I needed to buy enough to have it all the time because now I had a habit. So prior to that, here in Boston, I had done OxyContin before, and we called it like snobby dope, because at the end of the day, opiates are opiates, no matter what form, whether you're, you know, taking it as directed, or if you were chewing it, or sniffing it, or shooting it. At the end of the day, it's all an opiate, and when you're using it recreationally, you're using it to, you know, deal with things that you just don't have the tools emotionally to deal with in a healthy way.
There's always a void.
Yeah,
You know, everyone has their own void they're trying to fill.
So then, even though I was buying them in Mexico, I started doing enough that it was starting to cost a lot of money. So the money that
They weren't. How much were they for a piece?
so where an 80 back here would go for like $70 to $80. In Tijuana, they were $40 to $55.
So that definitely had to stop eating.
And then the money that I had made and like was sort of my cushion, you know, I went out, I got the same type of, I was working as a land surveyor most of my life in construction. So when I left here, I went to California, I was working. But the amount of money that I was spending on the OxyContin just became, you know, I couldn't keep up with it. So I thought, you know, I'll go back to Boston and I'll do one more score, and I would come back, do a robbery, and then go back to California and, you know,
Right, do it again.
be a dad.
That one last score wasn't. So I want to go back to the first. So when your first successful truck you did, how'd that feel? All that money.
So the actual doing it,
Like
it
I know
was
that
scary as hell.
I know that the adrenaline.
And that never went away.
Right.
The anxiety, like the
But the
anxiousness.
actual, I got away with this.
Yeah.
I got all this money.
I can remember smelling the money in the car. And, you know,
It's so much money.
your olfactory sense, your smell and memory are linked together strongly. So like when I remember that first time, the money would be wrapped in cellophane, and then like before the last wrap, they would put a manifest sheet in it, and you could pull the manifest sheet out and it would say, you know, where it was going,
Right.
how much total, and then it broke it down to all the different denominations. And we would pull that out in the car. Once we got to like a second car and we felt we were safe, we would pull that manifest sheet out and it would rip the cellophane, and you could smell the money when there's a lot of money
Yes.
together. I mean, you know, if you smell any dollar bill, it has a distinct smell.
Especially new.
It gave me a sense of power, John, and I don't mean like,
But it had
by
to be
power,
addictive.
what I mean was it gave me a sense of being able to do the things that I wanted to do, which can be limited by your finances. You know what I mean?
Right.
When I look, you know, all said and done, we stole about $2.5 million over the course of several robberies. And when I look back, a big portion of the money ended up going to drugs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what a waste. I didn't buy a flashy car. I wasn't into jewelry and things like that, but I bought my daughters whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
I spoiled them.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? I felt, you know, I missed some time, and again, I was kind of trying to keep up the appearance of maintaining a lifestyle that their mother had provided.
Very comfortable.
Yeah.
Of course, you want to give them.
And then
Give them whatever they want, but the feeling itself, did that become addicting?
I wouldn't say the feeling of doing it. It became a
not,
job.
Not the adrenaline and all that, but we got away with it. The power. You're
Yeah.
talking about this. We can probably get away with it again. I feel confident in
Yeah.
myself, in my abilities to do this, especially after 2 times, 3 times, 4 times.
Yep.
I would imagine that.
We got cocky. The morning of the very last robbery, which is the one that we ended up being incarcerated for, my co-defendant said to me, "We gotta quit while we're ahead. We've been good, but we've also been lucky."
Yeah.
And at that time,
But that was
we-
executed. That seemed like that was executed perfectly.
So we
Until-
knew
Bring it
that
on.
the FBI knew that we were doing it.
Yes,
And we
yes.
knew that they knew, and
Right,
they knew we
right.
knew, and it was a game of cat and mouse.
It's like the movie, like Heat, kind of. Like
Exactly.
Pacino knew
Yep,
that De Niro knew that he knew, and it was just a matter of.
yep. It would be you know, every time after each robbery, it got to the point, like the first 2, I was sort of like under the radar, but then once they knew of like the crew that was doing it and who was hanging with who, plus probably information that they had gotten.
Yes.
They would knock on my door. I would come down, and we consider ourselves like professional, the way we carried ourselves, the way we committed the robberies. And then even when the FBI came, I would say, "I understand you guys are doing
Right,
a
you
job.
got a job.
I have nothing to say. I'll help in any way I can. Speak to my attorney." And once you say speak to my attorney, they can no longer question you.
They're not
And then
supposed
once a new crime is committed, they come, and
Come
it was
back.
just sort of the
Right.
same, every time there was a robbery, they'd
Because
knock
at
on
that
our
time,
doors.
there's no one else that is capable
Yeah,
of and out there doing those type of things. So once there's something done, it's not like there's anyone else out there that's gonna fucking do it.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? So it's like that's what almost the biggest risk became. It's like it almost had to be us
yeah.
type deal. You know what I mean?
I can remember one time coming from the north end. In this, we robbed a truck. We switched from the first van to a second car, and as we were crossing the North End Bridge back into Charlestown, in the rearview mirror, I was driving, and I could see in the rearview mirror that they were blocking off the bridge. So they knew where we were going,
Yeah.
and it was just a matter of getting there before they did.
It's important to point out to people that aren't familiar and don't know what time it is. The statute of limitations has ran out on all these crimes.
Yeah, or I've been convicted.
Or he's been convicted.
And served the time
So,
for, yeah.
I've had people DM me and mention me talking about certain crimes and crimes being talked about. I'm not an idiot, and neither is Marty. We would never talk about crimes.
I think,
That-
John,
I just want to make sure
Yeah.
that the viewers know that anything we talk about, anything I ever talk about on this podcast, the statute of limitations have either passed or people have been convicted of these crimes. So that's important that we point that out.
and one thing that's really important for me to point out is that I would never glamorize that lifestyle, because there's nothing glamorous about it. All it did was cause me misery. I hurt my mother, I hurt my daughters. So, in 2003, their mother was killed in a plane crash. In 2005, they lost their father to prison. And they were 11 and 9 when their mother died, and they were 13 and 11 when I went to prison.
Yeah.
I didn't come home until they were 28 and 30. So there's nothing glamorous about that lifestyle. And that's one of the problems I have with Hollywood.
Right.
We were influenced by our neighborhood.
Right.
And then, like you mentioned, Heat, The Godfather. Hollywood makes it look cool to be a gangster. And, we saw guys, we hung out
And this
on
is
Main Street.
how we were brought up in a neighborhood where this is what was, and this is what I'll bring up, and it's a troll. He gets so fucking, and I don't care what he gets fucking pissed about. And this couldn't be more true about our neighborhood. Where you're from, the kid, I can't speak for where you're from. We grew up misinformed by the misinformed, who grew up misinformed by the misinformed.
Yeah.
That's what it's like being from here. So if you don't like that quote, I don't give a fuck, okay?
It is
If
what
it doesn't
is,
apply
yeah.
to you, I will say it every fucking episode because it applied to my life. And if I had grown up somewhere else, and if Marty had grown up somewhere else, things could have turned out so differently for either one of us. Do you know what I mean? And that's so, and I'm sure you've probably thought about that once or twice.
Yeah.
If I was raised somewhere else, and I know that to be true because
So when like I mentioned, I grew up playing hockey, and all my friends, hockey was like a
Yes.
religion in this neighborhood.
yes, that's another
And
thing.
when you're a young
Everybody
kid,
played hockey.
I wanted to grow up and play for the U.S. Olympic team. The 1980 team
Miracle.
that won the gold medal. I was 10 years old, so that was an influential moment in my life.
And we had a townie that played on that team.
Jackie O'Callaghan.
Jackie
I was
O'Callaghan.
17. So, my dream as a kid was to grow up. I want to play for the Olympics. I want to go to Boston University, and I want to play for the Bruins. When I got to high school and realized that, that's a pipe dream that, it's like hitting the lottery, and I can remember a point where I thought that that was not a realistic dream. And at that same time, my dreams shifted to, because of seeing the lifestyle that the, wise guys or gangsters, just for a lack of a better term, saw them driving nice cars, lots of free time to do whatever they wanted to do, girls, whatever. So my goal, my dream of becoming a professional hockey player at some point in my early teen years shifted to idolizing the bank robbers and armored truck robbers that we saw hanging on the corners daily.
It wasn't somebody with a 9 to 5.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. And so unfortunately, those are the people that I idolize. One thing I tell my daughters, they're 33 and 30 now. I try to help them understand that you can be anything in life that you want to be. You just have to apply yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I accomplished everything I ever applied myself. Unfortunately, I was applying myself to
the
wrong things. And, I think I literally grew up and, I became a mature man when I was in prison. And I didn't go in prison until I was 35, and it doesn't happen overnight.
Right. It's important, and we're going to point out for this podcast, and this is why I do it, and why I'm interviewing Marty, is because he didn't come out of prison worse than he went in. Do you know what I mean? And the things that he's accomplished since he got out. Since he got out of prison, he has done nothing but become a productive member of society in so many ways.
So I'm glad you mentioned that.
And I'm going to let him get into that, because this is what we do with this podcast. We talk about the solution and positive things that people are doing with their life after they were in a negative situation. And I'm going to let Marty talk about some of the things he's done since he got out of prison.
So the downfall due to addiction and an unhealthy lifestyle, like that's pretty obvious. How I turned it around, I think is pretty important to talk about. So I went to prison when I was 35. There aren't a lot of substantive programs There aren't a lot of substantive programs in the prison system.
No, there is not. Especially if you get bumped to higher security.
Yeah. Even in lower security. I mean, I did the rounds. I was in Norfolk, Gardner.
The dog program, right?
The dog program was great. But there's not a lot of good programs that have a meaningful impact in your life. So real quick, all right, the Department of Corrections motto is rehabilitation through substantive programming. In 2017, they had a $500 million budget. 77% of the budget goes to the guards' pay, 16% goes to medical, 3% goes to food, and 1.8% goes to programming. So you can't say that your mission statement is rehabilitation through substantive programming and then only spend less than 2% of your budget on programming. You mentioned the dog program. It's sort of the flagship program in the DOC, but they don't pay for that. None of the meaningful substantive programs are funded by the DOC.
Is that nonprofit or funded
we train service dogs for veterans and disabled people with a company called Needs out of Princeton, Mass.
Okay.
So they supplied the trainers, they supplied the dogs, the dog food, the shot, everything that requires to train a dog. The DOC just allows them to do it. So from 2016 to 18 or 19, I did the dog program. And then with about 3 years left on my sentence, Tufts University came to Concord. And it was supposed to just be one class for one semester. It was called Inside Out, and it was 10 inmates of the prison and 10 students from the Medford campus.
I did Inside Out
In Sousa.
no, in South Bay, but it was with
All right.
BC students.
It's a great
There
program.
was a restorative justice, program talking about restorative justice and all that.
Well, ours was the actual college curriculum.
Yeah, we got a college credits.
And then after that one class for one semester went well, the founder of the program wanted to expand it into a degree program. And January of 2019, I was lucky enough to get into the program, the first cohort of guys that did the program. So my last 3 years in prison, I spent it going to Tufts University.
Awesome. Yeah.
And up until that point, I knew that I didn't want to go back to living the old lifestyle of crime and drugs, because it just brought me nothing but misery and negativity. I grew up and I knew I wanted to do something better with my life, but I didn't know, I didn't have any direction. You know what I mean? And
But you were also definitely just a smarter person than that. You know what I mean? I've spent a substantial amount of time in prison and have come across a lot of people, and I read people, and I know who's an idiot and who's not.
so I committed crimes
Do you know what I mean?
for financial gain. Some guys do it for the financial gain as well as the street status that comes with it. And I took advantage of that at times, but my main goal was financial. So that when I was in prison, I wasn't a tough guy. I wasn't, I just wanted to do my time, be left alone, and get back to my family and my life. So I think Tufts came to Concord right at the right time for me, you know what I mean? So my last 3 years I spent it getting a degree. When I came home, they had started a reentry program. It's called My Turn, and it was 2 classes for 2 semesters. And in one of the semesters they taught personal finance, and one of the other semesters they taught tech for civic impact. So I learned a lot. My last phone when I went to prison was an Nextel.
Yeah. I remember
So when I came home, iPhone, smartphones, social media, the world had changed quite a bit. So doing that program was sort of a soft landing, coming home into a community, and even in that community, half the students are formerly incarcerated individuals and half is Medford students. So you're with people that understand what you've been through and what you're going through. Re-entry is not easy. There's no roadmap.
No.
After 17 years, I came home with a check for $1,400.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's some people that get released and just don't know what the fuck to do.
Yeah, and it's not.
And I've been there.
Yep.
I've been there. I've been released from a state prison sentence and been back in state prison before the month was over.
And that's where the Department of Corrections fails the taxpayers, using $500 million on their budget, and then, you know what I mean? There's so much more that they could do, and I'll just leave it at that. But I was lucky. I got into that Tufts community while incarcerated. I got my associates in liberal arts the same month that I was released, and then I did the My Turn program, and that sort of set me, that was sort of the compass that pointed me in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I had always, even when I was, committing crimes, I still went to work, so I had a good work ethic.
Yeah.
And was lucky enough to get back into Local 4, Operating Engineers Union, and now I'm a crane operator. And
Learned to tattoo?
I learned to tattoo. We're actually sitting in my studio.
Yes, we are.
One of the skills, some of the good things, I met a lot of good guys while incarcerated. Kind of sounds contradictory, but there are a lot of people in prison that are good people that just made bad choices.
Bad choices.
So I met a lot of good people. I got a college education. I learned how to train service dogs. And in training the service dogs was the first time that I learned to do something selfless. I got into that program because you maxed out in good time, and if you got a dog, you got a single cell. That was my motivation for getting into it. But then once I got into it and we started graduating dogs, and you would meet the clients that the dog got matched to, and they would explain how the dog changed their lives, and you realize that you're doing
something meaningful.
you're doing something with the dog to help somebody else live their life.
I can imagine
that
cool,
was
but also
a sense of doing something good with your time.
It would also be a little hard letting go of the dog.
So you say that everybody feels that way.
Yeah.
But then once you sit with somebody
And you know
they
it's
got a
going-
dog, and you know that like you're
It's
gonna
going
train,
to a place
the
where-
dog is at
yeah.
a good home,
Mhm.
and it has affected somebody's life in a positive way. It makes you like when I would talk to my daughters in their late teens, that was what I could tell them that I was doing with my, you know what I mean? I wasn't
Yeah.
just in the yard playing
Right,
cards
right.
and lifting weights and sports, and all that recreation is important, but it was nice to be able to tell my family that I was doing something positive with my time while away.
It's good stuff.
Yeah. So I think, education, no matter what level, is the key to self-improvement. Whether it's educating yourself about addiction or educating yourself about, civic life.
If you get to a point in life where you crave education, which is something I do just about anything pretty much, if I could educate myself about anything positive, and it took later in life to get to that point where I just wanted to consume as much information as possible.
It's never too late. It's never too late to learn. You're never too old to learn. You know what I mean? You should be learning all the time. We have a friend that's still incarcerated, and he'll tell me sometimes, "I'm still the same person I was when I was 17." And I'm like, "That's not a good thing. You shouldn't brag about that. You're supposed to grow as a human as you get older." Yeah, I don't want to put him on blast, but it's, you should want to grow as a person as you age. So back to the addiction issue. Everybody's path to. So I want to swing back to the addiction issue. Everybody's path to addiction is unique to the individual, and then the path to sobriety can be very unique. One of the problems with the DOC is they have a one-size-fits-all approach to rehabilitation, and that doesn't work, whether it's in prison or when it comes to addiction. I went to AA once, and I just felt it wasn't for me. I have lots of friends and family members that are active in the AA community, and that is what keeps them grounded and keeps them, on the right path.
It works.
And that's great.
A lot of people.
Some people need long-term programs.
The connection for people works.
For me,
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Having the ability to go where they can meet people, get phone numbers, pick up the phone when they need that help.
yeah.
The connection. is
Having
there.
community
Yes.
is important.
Is the
And-
opposite
And that's what
addiction.
the Tufts community brought me, a sense of, a community that's doing something positive. So for me, go to prison at 35 as a single father, feeling I let my kids down, I let my mom down. I had a long time to think about how I became the person that, landed in prison, and had a long time to think about what I wanted to do after prison. And you know, for a lot of years, I was just lost and didn't know what I wanted to do or how I was going to achieve the things that I wanted to achieve. Especially, so my brother overdosed on fentanyl I told you, everything is on the table. So in 2017, my brother died of a fentanyl overdose, and that was like around the time where I was really searching for what I wanted next in my life, and so that like really struck home the effect that fentanyl was having on the community. And so I just knew, I knew prison wasn't for me, so I made up my mind that, you know, the robbing days was, you know, been there, done that. I just wanted to come home and live a simple, positive life, you know, be a family man. I didn't know how I was going to do that, but when it came to the drugs, when my brother died in 2017, it really was a wake-up call and made me realize, and then it was just one after another, and it continues to happen, unfortunately. So I knew that the drug game had changed, and you know, I had been prescribed Suboxone prior to incarceration. All throughout my incarceration, I used it, you could say, recreationally, but it was a coping mechanism. So when I was coming home, I was debating with myself, did I want to continue to do Suboxone? Because it's, you know, I was thinking, oh, it's still a drug, it's a crutch. But I chose to do it because what I looked at it as an insurance policy.
Yeah.
Knowing me, so first of all, I had 3 years of supervised release in federal court. So knowing myself and being honest with myself, I knew that if I gave a urine 1 month for court, for probation, I knew there's a good chance I'm not going to see him for at least a month. I could probably get high one time, and you know, one time leads to 2 times. And knowing that about myself and being aware of the fentanyl situation, one time could have been all it took for me to game over.
Out there that,
and there's no
one time was the last
there's
time.
no do-over.